There's a moment that happens sometime in December. You notice it when the air changes, when lights appear in windows that aren't yours, when conversations start ending with the same question. So, what are you doing for Christmas? And for a split second, something inside you tightens. Not because you don't have an answer, but because the answer feels heavier than it should. You say it casually. You always do, probably. Just keeping it quiet this year. Nothing special, just a calm one, and maybe that's even true. But there's something beneath it. Something you don't usually name. Something that only shows up when the world gets loud about togetherness. And this is where it gets complicated. If you spend Christmas alone, you've probably learned how to explain it. You tell yourself you like the peace, that you don't care for the chaos, that it's overrated anyway. And sometimes that's genuine. You enjoy the quiet mornings, the absence of expectation. The way the day doesn't ask anything from you. But there's also another layer, a quieter one, the part of you that notices how everyone else seems to go somewhere how the world feels temporarily rearranged around belonging. How even silence feels different when you know it's being shared elsewhere. You don't necessarily feel lonely, but you feel separate. And you might wonder why that separation feels familiar. Why it doesn't shock you. Why, in some strange way, it feels safer than the alternative. You might tell yourself this is just preference, that you're independent, that you don't need rituals or gatherings to feel whole, that you're fine on your own. But this isn't the part people talk about, because if you sit with it long enough, a question starts to form. Why does being alone on a day that's about connection feel easier than being surrounded by people and still feeling unseen? Why does opting out feel calmer than showing up? Why does quiet feel more manageable than warmth? On the surface, psychology has answers. It talks about introversion, social fatigue, burnout, personality differences, and those explanations aren't wrong, but they're incomplete. Because there's a quieter reason beneath this. One that doesn't show up in personality tests or holiday plans, and it usually didn't start in December. Think back not to one dramatic memory, but to a pattern, the subtle ones, moments when togetherness didn't feel safe or steady. When gatherings came with tension. When love felt conditional. When being present meant being alert. Maybe holidays growing up were unpredictable. Sometimes warm, sometimes heavy. Sometimes affectionate, sometimes distant. Nothing you'd necessarily call traumatic. Just inconsistent. Enough to teach your nervous system something important, that closeness requires effort, that warmth can disappear without warning, that it's better to be self-contained than disappointed. So you adapted. You learned how to be okay without needing much. How to observe rather than lean in. How to keep your expectations low enough to avoid the drop. And over time, that skill didn't fade. It became part of how you move through the world. This is often the part people miss. Spending Christmas alone isn't always about isolation. Sometimes it's about control. Control over emotional exposure, over disappointment, over the quiet letdown that happens when you show up hoping for something, and it doesn't arrive. When you stay alone, the day stays neutral. Predictable. Manageable. No forced cheer. No navigating dynamics you've already rehearsed in your head. No feeling like you have to compress yourself to fit the moment. And for a nervous system that learned early to stay regulated by staying contained, that neutrality feels like relief. But inside that relief, there's often an unspoken conflict, because part of you does want connection. You notice it in small ways. In the way certain songs feel heavier in December. In the way you linger on memories you usually keep tucked away. In the way you feel a strange ache when the day ends. Not sharp, not dramatic, just present. You don't want spectacle. You don't want obligation. You just want ease. To be somewhere you don't have to explain yourself. To be with people who don't require performance. To exist without managing the emotional temperature of the room. And this is where many people turn inward and blame themselves. They tell themselves they're broken. To guarded. To distant. To hard to please. But that's not the truth, and it never was. The deeper psychological truth is quieter. People who spend Christmas alone are often people who learned very early how to self-soothe, how to become emotionally sufficient, how to regulate themselves without relying on consistency from others. That doesn't come from coldness. It comes from adaptation, from a system that learned, I'll be okay on my own, because depending feels risky. So when a day like Christmas arrives, a day loaded with expectation, symbolism, emotional memory, your system chooses what it knows how to handle. Distance, simplicity, control. Not because you don't value connection, but because you value stability. And here's the part almost no one says out loud. Spending Christmas alone doesn't mean you lack love. It often means you understand its weight. You know what it costs to show up fully. You know how much energy it takes to be emotionally present. You know how deeply you feel things when you let yourself. So you choose the version of the day that doesn't ask you to armor up or brace for impact. That choice isn't weakness. It's awareness. Still, there's a tenderness underneath it all, because if you're honest, you don't want to be alone forever. You're not rejecting connection as a concept. You're just waiting for a version of it that feels safe enough to enter without shrinking. A place where closeness doesn't come with emotional labor. Where warmth doesn't require vigilance. Where being there doesn't mean managing everyone else. And until that exists, you choose quiet. This isn't avoidance. It's discernment shaped by experience. It's a nervous system that learned to protect something precious, your capacity to feel, by placing it where it won't be overwhelmed. And if that means spending Christmas alone some years, that doesn't make you disconnected. It makes you careful with what you carry. The story doesn't end with a solution. There's no instruction here. No push to fix anything. Just an understanding that the part of you who chooses solitude on days like this is the same part that learned how to survive emotional unpredictability with grace. That you're not missing out because you're incapable of connection. You're waiting because you know what real connection costs and what it's worth. And maybe one day you'll share a Christmas with people who feel like home. Or maybe you won't. Either way, your worth doesn't change. So if this season feels quieter for you, if the lights feel a little distant, if the silence feels both comforting and heavy, know this: you're not alone because you failed to belong. You're alone because you learned how to protect something tender. And that says more about your depth than your absence. If this felt familiar, you're not alone here.